My name is Gary Parker. I'd like to welcome you here today. I'm the Managing Director of CNT Associates. We are a business support and fundraising company based in South East London. And I'm going to be presenting today on how to write a funding application or bid. I'm also joined by regular contributor Rachel Barham from FSB, who is a regional recruiter, who will speak to you later about FSB. I'm a member of FSB as well, and I've been for a long time. But Rachel will tell you more about that. And we will look at a whole range of issues today. What I normally say to you is that we will be recording this and we may put it either on our YouTube channel, which I would advise you all to subscribe to. It's free. And we may put it on LinkedIn as well. So if you don't want to be identified, then please switch off the camera and remove any other identifying information. If you're still concerned after that, then please contact us. We take your safety and security very seriously and can take other measures if we need to do so after that. The other thing is you're welcome to put your questions in the chat and you're welcome to ask questions through it, but again, other people will be able to access your information. So if you don't want that, then please don't put it in the chat. What will happen is I will do a presentation on this. It's not an interactive one because this is too big an issue to make interactive. You'll get an overview of how to write a bid. After the presentation, you'll be able to ask questions and you can email us afterwards. You will get a everybody will be who's on the call today will be emailed a free copy of the summary presentation, which is about 20 slides, about 22 slides. The full presentation is 47 slides, and that, if you want that, you can buy that from us. It costs £12, and again, all the details of that will be in the email you will get after the presentation today, with a number of other offers as well. So I'm going to start now because there's quite a lot to go through. I'm going to share the screen and I will do a presentation on bid and application writing for beginners, which covers most of the key elements of bid writing for beginners. So we'll just go into this now. Okay, here we are. The first thing I'd like to do is to introduce myself. I've done the domestics. CNT, as I just said, is a business support and fundraising organisation. We're based in South East London. We'd have been around since 2003. There's myself and a number of colleagues, and we have raised over £30 million for the businesses, non-profit making organisations and charities that we have worked for. And we also do a wide range of business support to help people set up non-profit making and indeed profit making companies. Here are all our social media. I've already pointed out our YouTube channel. Or you can just Google it and look for CNT Associates. Again, we've got there's an earlier copy of this presentation already on that, and we'll post this one in due course, because these presentations are updated regularly, and there's all our other information. Or you can, if you can find me on LinkedIn, my name's Gary Parker. There's the LinkedIn link there. Today we're going to cover finding the right funding, submitting a quality application, equalities, social impacts, and other related issues, and a very short bid writing workshop. And I'm going to show you an easy method on how to write a bid. Bid writing is not rocket science. There's no such thing as a born bid writer. It's a skill that you can learn, and it's like you know, riding a bike or painting or whatever. Obviously, the more you do it, the more you'll improve your skills and techniques. And I'm going to show you some of the key issues to help you get there. These first, we'll start off with my 5 bid writing top tips. I'm sure you're all excited by that. The first thing is to decide the direction of your project or organization and look for funding to support it. So in other words, decide on the direction or the vision of your organization, and then wherever you want to go, look for the funding to support that, not vice versa. Just don't chase money, because often there are issues around that and you may get diverted from your primary purpose. The second tip is to research funders. There's 2 elements to writing a bid. First is to find the funders, because no matter how good a bid writer you are, if there aren't any funders to fund your project, then you may not get there. So that's the second tip, to research funders. I'm going to give you some information on that shortly. Thirdly, to develop a project plan or outline, and we're going to look at that. Then develop a model application, or a core bid, it's sometimes called in the trade, and build on that. So you get one model application, and you can populate online applications or develop other bids and use edited sections of the bid. Finally, be persistent. Bid writing takes time, so don't be a quitter. The more bids you write, obviously the more chance you've got of success. If you write 10 bids and you get one that succeeds, that's lucky. But if you write 100 bids based on that logic, then you might get 10 bids that succeed. You may get less than that, but one thing's for sure, the more you stick at it, the more likely you are to succeed. So we're going to move on now to looking at actual funders to start with. The first area we're going to look at, because there's different types of funding, and I put them into 6 different groups here. The first is grant-making trusts and foundations. That's charitable trusts and a range of others. The second is statutory funding, so that's local. It could be European, because there's still a little bit of European funding around, and national government funding of various types. The next is community fundraising of various types, which we will look at, and includes things like crowdfunding as well. The fourth is lottery funding. I think most people are familiar with the National Lottery and some of the other funders, but we're going to look at some lottery funding. Then funding via private companies and the private sector. Many large companies have their own charitable trusts, companies like Barclays, Santander, the Body Shop, and others. And then the final group are what I call, or what is called, social investment. This is it's kind of hybrid funding, really. Sometimes it's part grant, part loan funding. Sometimes it's grant funding with certain social outcomes attached to it. And other times it's grant funding with certain specifications attached. So there's different types of social investment, and we'll look at some of those a bit later. So in terms of types of funding, what do you know about these? I'm going to look at these generally first, and then we'll look at some particular funds. Grant making trusts and foundations have been around in the UK for many, many years. That some of them in London, particularly some of the old livery companies, go back to the 10th, 12th century. So, you know, they're not short of resources. There are a significant number of trusts in the UK. There's over 100,000 that give over £1 million a year out in funding, and there's many others that give less than that. They will generally give to what is called charitable activity, and within the criteria of their trust deed. What that means is if they were set up to fund support for children and young people, for example, that's all they can fund. They can't fund digital projects or projects for older people, etc. They can only fund funding for that particular group because they were set up with a legal structure that authorizes them to do that, and they can't go outside of that remit. These vary from small grants to 500 plus grants, and indeed some say unlimited funding, although often they never specify what that means, but it means they've got discretion to fund. Some charitable trusts can fund organisations to a significant level if they choose to do so. Assessment times, they're not often quick, because clients I work for, I say to them, you've got to configure in about 6 months on average to get responses, and some of them, especially during the pandemic, have been taking up to a year and more. There are reasons for this, because usually they've got to get signed off by a board or senior people in the organisation. For example, the lottery do that, but that's done every month with the lottery, so it rolls on. But with smaller charities and even some big ones, they don't do that because they're legally obliged to do this, or they do it on a more limited basis, quarterly, 6 months, a year. So you do need to factor that in, and they're all different. There's no average time. The quickest funder to respond is usually the lottery, which is about a month to 2 months, although it can take longer sometimes. Like projects which make money go further by levering in other funds, what that means is if you've got match funding, that does help, you know. So if you've got want £10,000 and you've got 5,000 already, that can help. But there are many funders out there where you don't have to have match funding. It's the project idea that they're interested in and what you're doing for your beneficiary groups. A lot of the organisations I work with say to me, we do good work and we find difficulty getting funded. And I say to them, it's not necessarily about you, it's about what you can do for the client group and whether it fits in with the priorities of the funder. If you get to that stage, then you're increasing your chances significantly. Here is a couple of examples of where to get information about this from. There's a website called My Funding Central. There is some free access to this. There's a paywall on it as well, so you need to check that out. It depends how large or small you are, whether you'll get free or paid access, but you can check that out. There's another one there. This is an example of a charitable trust. It's an international one called the Global Fund for Women, which funds women-led organisations and projects across the world. And both of those are worth having a look at. Who are the biggest charitable trusts? The top 500 charities are giving out approximately 2.5 to 3 billion. Yes, that's £billion a year. And the others, this is an estimate from an organisation called the Directorate of Social Change, about 1.5 billion or so. So it's about 5 billion a year. So it's still very significant. And DSC do this by monitoring the top 500 charities and then an estimate of others. In terms of statutory funding, this includes government funds, local health authority, grants and commissioning, European funds. These are done on a different basis. It's usually to a very tight specification of some description. So they'll send you a description of what they want delivered, and then you've got to match that. And it's usually matching the funders' objectives. These are larger and longer grants often, and more likely to fund core costs. That is your basic running costs. Many charities will only fund you for a year, 2 years. If you get 3 years funding from a charity, you're doing very well. But many of charitable trusts only fund a year, 2 years, or even less than that in some cases. But the larger statutory funders are more bureaucratic and inflexible, so you've really got to adhere to their criteria or you won't get through. The application process may be complicated and drawn out with more than one stage. So you might have to go through 2-stage process. Some very big funders also have a stage 3, which is a visit to the project. But there will be guidelines and support for applicants on this. Generally speaking, these days they put up a website and or a web link, and you're able to ask questions, clarify things about the funding application. Again, here are a number of organisations that can give you information about this. I've already mentioned My Funding Central. Another very good site is grantsonline.org.uk. That is, again, part free and part paywall. We use that ourselves, so I can definitely recommend that. It's got lots of other funding information on it as well. The final one is the government's website, gov.uk. Again, if you do a search for charitable funding, business funding, whatever, you'll get some links on that, I can guarantee, because that's all government services, including fundraising support and links for community and other organisations that's on there. So well worth checking out. This is the lottery. There are a number of strands to the lottery. There's some of them. Awards for is the smallest strand. We'll look at that a bit later. That's up to about £10,000. The Arts Council gets lottery money. And indeed, if you're involved in arts, sport, or heritage and culture, the lottery gives money to other bodies like the Arts Council, the Heritage Lottery Fund, and Sport England for projects, and they're usually designated separately as lottery funding projects on their website. So if you're an art or cultural project, you should go to the Arts Council. If you're a heritage or cultural project, you can go to the Heritage Lottery, and if it's a sports project, then obviously Sport England. There's the lottery's main website at the bottom. You can check that out for links throughout the UK, because we've got devolved nations now, so there's funding for Scotland, Wales, etc., and it's done on a regional or devolved basis. We'll move on now to funding for companies. These are not particularly useful for small voluntary sector organisations, and often only small amounts or one-off grants. There are some bigger ones. Many companies only give to well-known charities. Some companies can provide help in kind, e.g. legal advice, furniture, free use of premises, rooms, etc. And many big companies operate programs called corporate social responsibility, which can be giving grants to people in the community, but it can also be utilising their skills. And many of the big banks and accountancy firms use their skills. For example, accountancy firms can help you do your accounts because you'd have to pay for them otherwise, and a whole range of other services that are provided by companies large and small. Again, a few links there. The Entrepreneur's Handbook, I would strongly recommend that because it's very good generally for business, but also it's got 60 pages of grant funding on that website throughout the UK, and well worth checking out. And there's a couple of other organisations. The one at the bottom is Business in the Community, and they were set up many years ago by Prince Charles, actually, and they match businesses with community organisations and charities to do joint projects, and in some cases to fund or support the community organisations. The next thing I'd like to move on to is crowdfunding. There are different types of crowdfunding. This is a relatively new form of community funding, and there's a number of sites for, if you're a non-profit making organisation, indeed some profit making organisations are on this. I would strongly advise you go on crowdfunded.co.uk. But how most crowdfunding sites make for non-profits and for some businesses is that you will put a project idea with a very short video that you have to make yourself on one of the platforms like crowdfunded.co.uk. That's one of the biggest in the UK, and then they will charge you between 4 and 9%. This is roughly some. There are some free ones, there are some that charge less, there are some that charge more, but the general range is between 4 and 9% of what you raise. You don't have to pay up front, and you can offer people rewards. So, for example, if you're an arts project, you could offer people tickets to events or free artwork or prints, whatever. Whatever you do, you can offer people rewards as part of the process. But I would strongly advise, if you're considering this, to look at a site like crowdfunder.co.uk and see what other people do and see what people do that are similar to you. For purely business oriented organisations or businesses, there's a site called Crowdcube. There are other ones as well. This is more like Dragon's Den investment. People will risk invest in businesses in the form of shares for either small or large amounts of money. Obviously, if that company succeeds, then they've got a share of it. If it doesn't succeed, then the money is at risk. Crowdcube is managed or owned by Richard Branson's Virgin Group, and they've raised significant funding for their client groups, and they attract both businesses and investors. And these are old figures, but at that time, which was at least a year ago, I think, they'd raised 600 million for businesses from investors. There's a couple of other sites there. Indiegogo's American one, and Kickstarter is the other one. That was mainly creative industries, but there are some of the business ones on that, and that's in both of international sites and operate all over the world and attract people, donors and others from internationally. So crowdfunding, that's explained it very quickly. If you need more information about that, please contact me and I can advise you a bit more about that. Here's some other sources of information. There's a range of it. This is business finance, if you're interested in that. That's the government site. Business Hub London is what it says there. It's a business hub, and they have a lot of very useful information on that particular site. Another good source of information, particularly around intellectual property, which is a big issue for every type of organisation these days, is an organisation I do some work for on and off, which is the British Library, and that is an excellent resource and can advise you. They've got a lot of local projects running in many local libraries as well, but the British Library at King's Cross run a lot of excellent presentations and seminars. They were mainly live before the pandemic, but now they're a mixture of online and live again. I think if they're not doing it now, they should be going back to it very soon, hopefully. Another one is socialenterprise.org.uk, which again is an organisation I do some work for on and off. It's Britain's biggest coordinating body for social enterprises, and is well worth having a look at their website and considering to join it if you're a social enterprise. You get a very good deal if you're a small one as well, although they have got some very, very well-known and bigger members. The final one is a very useful site called Know-How, NCVO, which can give information about fundraising and a whole lot of other things involved in developing a non-profit making organisation. So here are some strands of information about specific types of funding. This is capital funding. This is for funding for buildings and premises. And there are a few links there. The National Lottery provides some information and sites to help you get capital funding. There's a few other ones there. Garfield Weston is a big organisation, but they only fund charities, but they've got quite a lot of money. And then there's a number of other ones there as well that are all worth checking out. That's for buildings and premises. The grants for these are often bigger because obviously the funding required for buildings and premises is significant, as opposed to what we're going to see shortly, which is revenue funding. This is for the running and development of projects. And there's a few there. I've already mentioned awards for all. One that I particularly like is the Paul Hamlin Foundation, the second one there. That funds a lot of organisations, sometimes individuals that have new ideas or ideas that are not in the mainstream, shall we say, and they also fund a lot of work for young people. But there's a number of others there. A good source of information for that, for revenue funding for project development and management, is My Funding Central, which I've already referred to and is at the bottom of the slide there. So we've gone through quite quickly where to access funding, so that's part one. The next bit is how you actually write a bid. So this starts with the initial steps, and here's a few tips to get you going. The gap between success and failure in this area is very slight. But remember, it's not an inclusive process. It's designed to knock you out. It's a bit like sifting CVs for job interviews. I know a woman who works for a big city recruitment agency, and she gets applications for lots of jobs. And I said to her recently, do you actually read all these? And she said, oh yes, everyone gets about 1 minute. So, you know, if it's not there straight away, you know, most applications are written still, it's not there straight away, and you don't keep it clear and concise, that can give you problems. But detail is important. One of the things we always do here at C&T is we get people to proofread their work. I give it to a colleague who knows nothing about the project, and if they read it and they understand it, then I've done my job. I'm on the right track, because if it's so complex that they can't understand it, then whoever's reading at the other end, and remember, they might have hundreds of applications to read. If they can't get what the essence of the project is straight away, then you're not going to succeed. So you need to keep it clear and simple. Most bids fail for two reasons. We're not doing this interactively, but I can tell you what they are. The first one is they don't meet the deadline. I'll show you some stats about that a bit later. And the second one, in some cases, is they're not signed. Because these days it's often by electronic signatures. The reasons for that is sometimes applications are legally binding. So if they haven't got your signature, it's not legally binding in terms of the terms and conditions. For example, if you submit a lottery bid, there's a section at the end where you have to accept certain conditions. And if you don't acknowledge that, then your bid will not be considered. So that improves your chances of succeeding by about 15%, I think it is, straight away, and more on some applications. So it's not rocket science, this. Just read the guidelines. It's very important. Before you begin a project, you need obviously to decide on your project idea, but you need to map it out. So what does your project wish to achieve, whatever it is? Who will the beneficiaries be? Who are you aiming at? Is it older people, younger people, whoever the target group is? Then you need to be concise about that. What services will you offer to people? What is your offer to the funder, and what area will you work in? That could be a geographic area, it could be a sectoral area, but you need to clarify all these things. Obviously, they're fairly basic, but they are important. And then you need to describe activities, which is a description of individual steps required to achieve your objectives, whatever they are. And here's an example of that. 5 12-week courses, each comprising 1 hour of individual guided learning lessons, 4 1-hour group sessions, 4 1-hour tutorials, and 4 to 6 hours of open learning with access to IT facilities. One of the reasons that some lottery bids fail is that people don't, well, they describe what they can deliver and what the issue is, whoever the group is they're working with. They don't actually detail what project idea, what project steps they're going to deliver. So it could be workshops, it could be one-to-one, it could be group work, whatever it is, you have to detail that in the application so people know exactly what they're funding and how many people you are providing services to. That's quite important, because I see a lot of applications where people they describe the issue or the problem they're seeking to solve and what they hope the end result will be, but not how they're going to get there. So that's very, very important, what the activities are and that these are clearly itemized. Then obviously you've got to put in your resources. You need a budget as well, but I'm not covering budgetary issues today because we don't have enough time, but you need to itemize a budget that is clear and that adds up. And then you've got staffing for the project, or if it's not staffing, volunteers, because some projects are run by volunteers or interns. If you're a private business, or by some other means, could be partnership delivery. Then you need to give information about the premises. This can range from where the premises actually are to what the premises can entail. For example, have they got disabled access? Have they got good IT facilities, etc., etc. Then you've got to detail the materials that people may get, whether it's training materials or any other materials that you're providing as part of your project. And then the administrative support, because you might have to write action plans for people or communicate with people. You need to detail how the project is managed and how what administrative support is going to be there. You also need to put in the outputs. Outputs are activities, services numbers, products, and results. So it could be, for example, 35 tradies complete a level 1 course. It could be 36 weeks of training undertaken with an average attendance of 18 young people. That's an output. An outcome is rather different, and people often confuse the two. That includes qualitative and anticipated changes. For example, 2 examples here: improved literacy skills amongst the target group in the target borough. So they will have had, language tuition, etc., etc. And the result of that is that they'll improve the literacy, could help them get a job, and of course it could increase their English skills in 90% of refugee children completing courses, as in this example here. So there's a range of outcomes that come out of the outputs into the course, which is the training, support, whatever you're delivering, and the outcomes are what the results are of whatever outputs you've had. Your outcomes should reflect your aims, and you should be able to monitor and measure them in some way. So, you know, if you say you're going to support 100 people or whatever, you've got to have some means of doing that. You might get them to complete an evaluation or something. You've got to look at what we call key performance indicators. You've got to identify them. So it could be 100 people completing a 3-month support program or training program, whatever. You've just got to that should reflect the aims of your organization and your project. You should always evaluate the outcomes of the project and use the findings to improve services. Sometimes these days funders ask for what are called learning reports. In other words, you know, what went well on the project, what didn't go so well, and what could be improved, and what the learning is for future programs. That's what they're often interested, both in terms of your project and for their own services as well, or the services that they fund. So that's quite important as well. The other thing that people always ask me about, and is important in funding applications, is if you say there's a need for a project, the funder will not just take your word. You need to prove that. You need to prove the need for your project. So you need to get relevant statistical information. It can be from your own resources through previous projects, for example, or surveying people or talking to them anecdotally or through social media, whatever. But you may need relevant statistical information with regard to this. How can you collate it, and what are the sources of information? Here are a few. The first is obviously from your own organization, but you need to be aware that if you're using internal data, you should be registered with the Data Protection Act, the DPA, through the Information Commissioner. And quite important. And you need to look at your local statistics. For example, the best place to get it is probably from your local authorities, wherever you are. And so if you're based, for example, in Lambeth, it would be lambeth.gov.uk, bexley.gov.uk, manchester.gov.uk, etc., etc. Your local health organisation or clinical commissioning group, although the change in structure of those at the moment, but the NHS in most areas usually produce what's called a JNS, a joint needs statement or assessment about health needs in the area, and usually have some good statistics. Or the other place to go, and we use this, is the Office for National Statistics. If you register with them, you can get access to lots of national and local statistics on just about anything, really. So well worth checking that out when you're writing a bid to back up the evidence of need for your project. That's why you do it. Here are some key pointers about submitting a quality application. So the first point to remember is be prepared. Do you need to register your interest? Sometimes you have to do that now. They usually give a very short period. It's just a very, very short outline expression of interest sometimes, and sometimes they ask you to complete what's called a PQQ, which is a pre-qualification questionnaire. If you're new to that, you should get some advice, because PQQs are usually for local authorities or bigger funding streams, and they're usually designed to sift out people at a very early stage. So if you're keen on bidding for whatever you're bidding for, then you need to look at that quite carefully. But that's called a pre-qualification questionnaire. Sometimes as well, you have to have, they ask for policies. For example, if you're going to a local authority, they'll probably ask for your policy on GDPR and data management, and also other things like safeguarding or health and safety policies in some cases. I mean, it does vary. Again, you may be asked to provide these. So if you've not got them, you need to investigate those. You need to read the prospectus or guidelines carefully. Apart from anything else, you need to establish eligibility by using those and ensure that you have suitable systems in place to manage the grant funding and to manage the project. And the final bullet point there is to apply for a budget you can cope with, because that is very important. If you're a small organisation, there's no point in applying for a very, very large budget, because funders may have some issues about letting small organisations manage very large budgets unless you can prove in some detail about that you have the people and the systems to manage that. So if you're going to do that, then you need to address those two issues in particular. The next item you have to have is clarity. Explain how the project fits in with the funders' priorities, whatever they are. The funders can all have priorities, and you've got to demonstrate how your project matches that. Answer all parts of each section clearly, quantify outputs clearly, use bullet points whenever you can. That's fine. Particularly often many applications are word limited. And please type your application, or in some cases handwrite it clearly. Can everybody go on mute, please? There's somebody in the background who's not on mute. The next is good practice. And it's very important that you read the whole form before you start and fill in all the straightforward sections first. Ensure that anybody involved in delivery and monitoring of the project have a hand in writing the application, or at least you consult them. And if you've got managers, ensure that managers are consulted and have some ownership of it as well, because they might have to manage the delivery of it if your bid succeeds. Share your first draft with a colleague and test the clarity of the aims and objectives by presenting them to colleagues, whether it's personally or to a group of people. If you've answered the question fully, then stop writing. You're not obliged to fill up every text box, although if it's very, very word limited to 250 words or whatever, then obviously it's a good idea to get as close to 250 words as you can. I'm going to show you a very quick system here on how to write a bid, how to build up a model application. So basically, this works on 10 ideas, which are 400 words. That's 20 sentences of 20 words each. And each idea or proposition should consist of 2 sentences of 20 words each. So the first sentence is a statement, whatever the statement is, and I'll show you one in a minute. And then the second sentence is evidence to support that statement, whatever it is. So it's evidence from research, experience, signposting, whatever. You can start that out with a bullet point, just by putting a bullet point down and develop that into an idea. So the first sentence, sentence 1, again, to reiterate that, is a statement of 20 words. And then sentence 2 is the evidence to back it up. So here's an example of that. This is from a childcare project. The bullet point is provide childcare support alongside the training program. Sentence 1 is we will provide creche and childcare support for students and their dependents that will run alongside the training course. That's 19 words. And the sentence to back that up or support it is previous research shows that this this help needs to be available both before and after training to ensure students' full commitment. Or you could use other evidence. You could say after a student survey, 90% agreed that childcare ensured their full commitment. So it doesn't have to be complicated, this, but it's a very easy way to build up a bid. You build up a core bid using 10 sentences. Here's some other issues to consider that are very important: equalities and diversity, social impact, cross-cutting themes, and added value. So equality and diversity, we live in a society that's multicultural and people need equal access to services. So you need to take into account how you expect the project to affect all groups of people in society. There could be young people, not minorities, disabled people, or any other disadvantaged groups, for example. There are 7 strands of equality, and I've listed them there. I won't go through all of them. And then there are what are called 9 protected characteristics, and again I've listed them there. And you need to think about how your project can take into account these strands of protected characteristics and enable people to have equal access to your project or services. What will the project do to promote diversity and equal opportunities? What will the project do to ensure equality of opportunity? And equal access to services, as I've said, is very important. So that's a very important issue to take into account. Here are some common mistakes on funding applications and why they're often ineligible. The most common mistakes are due to not reading the guidance properly, because sometimes I know bid writers, particularly in the early stages of their career, who've written bids for organisations that weren't eligible if they were a non-profit making organisation or social enterprise, for example, and they're bidding to a funding stream that only funds registered charities. You know, you may write a perfect bid, but if you're not eligible to apply, then you aren't going anywhere, unfortunately. So read the guidance. That is a very important point. Applications take a lot of time and energy, so don't waste it through carelessness. Here's a study from a few years ago from a project called Fast Forward Grants. And nearly half of them, this is about 40%, were ineligible in a previous round. 137 were due to not providing the correct financial information. So that's incomplete accounts, no bank details given, the budget didn't add up, a range of things, because obviously budgets are very, very important. Other reasons included organisations not eligible. I've just gone through that, asked for too much money, or didn't state the project action. So that's actually what you're going to deliver to the target group, all the things I've already mentioned, and this is kind of reinforcing that. This was on, again, this is from a few years ago, so I think this has improved, but 74% of applications were ineligible on this particular round. Why was that? Missing information. Because what happens with a lottery, for example, I put on the constitutional status there. If you're a non-profit making company, you need at least 3 directors. If you haven't got 3 directors and they're not registered with Companies House, Awards for will check this out first, because that's what they do. They check your constitutional status. And if it's not there, if you haven't got 3 directors listed and the names that you've given on the application form, then it won't go forward as soon as that. They'll just reject it and you'll have to apply again. But then there's other things like bank account details aren't there, contact dates of birth, because you have to provide your date of birth to Awards for All. So, you know, this is not the actual bid, it's just additional information. So you don't want to write a good bid and then fail because you've not provided organizational or personal information. So that's quite an important point, that. We're moving on a bit now towards the end. So here are my 10 tips and related information for bid writing. Use these for reference. Remember, it takes time to build up these skills, but there are many sources of help to support your work. The first one, it is essential that the funding criteria is carefully read before deciding whether to apply, because you might not be eligible or there might be other issues. You've got to check that out. Number two is make sure you think through exactly how the project will be managed and how the work will progress, because if it's not clear, that could prejudice your application. Make sure you're clear about the funding conditions so that you're able to meet these. So, for example, awards for, you've got to deliver the project within 1 year. If you can't do that, then you shouldn't apply, because if you don't deliver within 1 year, the lottery will claw the money back. This is another important point, number 4. Funders are increasingly likely to ask what difference your service will make to people's lives. So, you know, what difference will your service make? What the social impact is. That's what basically they're saying. That's the technical term for it. So you've got to really think about that one. And it's also advisable to have a credible exit or succession strategy. In other words, what happens when the grant funding period and grant funding runs out? How does your project go forward then? If you can address that, then funders are much more likely to fund you, because they want to fund sustainable projects, not ones that will end after a year or 2 years. Make sure you answer the question and that the funders are actually asking. So if they ask a question, because this is a very common issue, you've got to read it and answer the question, you know, not just put in standard text, and answer the questions clearly, directly and succinctly. 7, make sure you provide any evidence you can to support the application, and we went through that area earlier, where you could get evidence from or your own organizational or anecdotal sources. Any data, community consultation, research, social impact evidence is very important. So if you've got evidence from previous projects that you can roll into the current one you're applying for, you should try and do that, or get research from other sources. The financial information or budget you provide must be complete and correct. So the budget must add up and be well structured. We're going to be doing something about budgets in a future presentation. And finally, make sure the application is signed by the relevant and appropriate persons. These days, it's usually an online signature, but not always. And of course, if you're submitting applications by post, you will have to sign them usually. Final point on this, remember, it's not necessarily the good idea which gets funding, it's the good application. So I meet lots of organizations that do great work, but they struggle to write applications. So it's a skill you would be well advised to learn. So here are the next steps. Start by working on short applications to build up your skills and confidence. If your organization does not have a track record, it will be difficult at first, but don't be a quitter, keep at it. Try to work in partnership with others whenever possible, and always remember, one good bid could pay off. That's all you need to get a start, and then you've got a track record. So that's our fundraising guide, which you'll get an offer of later. I'm going to stop the share now. This is taking a bit longer than normal, but I have gone into a lot of detail here. So I'm quite happy to take any questions from people now. I'm just going to look in the chat, but please email me. Yeah, Isaac's put libraries have good sources of information there. It's quite correct. And there's a couple of other points there. Let's have a look. People have put I guess the model bid is closely aligned to the direction of the organisation, as you first mentioned. Yes, that's correct, Isaac. The model bid should align with your aims, objectives, priorities, and whatever is the ethos of your organisation. As I say, you can email me or put other stuff in the chat. I'm now going to introduce Rachel, because she's been very patient. Apologies, it's taken me a while today, but I'm going to give you access now. So over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Gary. I'm actually going to try something new, so I do apologise if this doesn't work, because I'm going to share a video. But I know we've all been on Zooms where people have tried to share videos and it doesn't work, so I'm hoping it does. If you can't hear, can someone please basically show me that they can't hear it, because otherwise it will be pointless watching.
FSB aims to help smaller businesses achieve
You'll have to
their
speak
ambitions.
and tell me if you can hear that.
As the biggest business representation group in the UK, we're not for profit and solely exist to help the UK's smaller businesses thrive.
Yes, I can hear.
Oh, you can.
I can hear.
Like
Perfect,
no
thank
other,
you.
offering you access to a national business network, a powerful voice in government,
I can hear.
and exclusive benefits to help you set up, run, and grow your business. When you're with us, you get access to a network of businesses based throughout the UK to help you gain contacts, grow your business.
We can't see, we can hear, but can't see.
Speakers at different events.
Would you prefer me to stop
and make
it?
contact either face to face or virtually through FSB's websites. Whatever your business.
If I stop it for there, would you prefer me to stop it if you can't see it? It's just people drawing.
I think it was okay. I don't mind.
Yeah, I can carry on playing it if it's down to you. You guys have got to watch it, so or listen, as the case may be.
Yeah, you might as well play it, Rachel.
Yeah, cool. No worries. Here you go.
FSB aims to help smaller businesses achieve their ambitions. As the biggest business representation group in the UK, we're not for profit and solely exist to help the UK's smaller businesses thrive. We're a membership organisation like no other, offering you access to a national business network, a powerful voice in government, and exclusive benefits to help you set up, run, and grow your business. When you're with us, you get access to a network of businesses based throughout the UK to help you gain contacts, grow your business, and learn from other business owners and speakers at different events, and make contact either face-to-face or virtually through FSB's websites, whatever your business and wherever you are. You get a powerful voice in government, securing wins that make a real difference to your business. As a direct result of our lobbying, every small employer has had £3,000 taken off their national insurance bill every year. The government has agreed to reduce business rates by £6.7 billion from 2017. Ministers are toughening rules to tackle late payments from large suppliers. And we secured a commitment from the Prime Minister for a new 10 megabits per second universal service obligation for small business broadband. We give you exclusive benefits at no extra cost, such as employment law, covering contracts, advice, and tribunal defence, which are a constant worry for any smaller businesses. Tax protection, including full and aspect inquiry, ex-inspectors working for you, and VAT and PAYE matters covered. Unlimited legal advice and legal templates, including our 24/7 legal helpline to guide you, with no limit on how many times you call them. And let's face it, if you had a burning issue, you might need to. You can also access other market-leading benefits that offer preferential rates, all cutting your outgoings in business bank charges, insurance and car payments, as well as making your workplace pension obligations hassle-free. With FSB, you can find the right business services to run your business whatever sector, location, or size. Our members join us for our expertise, support, knowledge, advice, and because we're reliable and trustworthy. Join us in making your business fly.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully you got the gist of that anyway. Let me stop sharing that. But I suppose in brief, I am the FSB membership advisor for South East London, but I can work with anybody from anywhere. But as the video explained, FSB is a massive organisation that is here to support you as small business owners. We've done a lot of work, particularly during the pandemic, in regards to accessing grants and support, and we continue because obviously some people still need it. But the other side of things is because of our size, it gives us the buying power that you probably don't have, because we've got about 200,000 members. And that's enabled us to get lots of benefits available to you that underpin your business. So things like free business legal advice, help reducing the cost of your insurances, or even helping you understand what insurances you need, because it's very hard to go and get a quote if you actually don't know what your business needs in the first place. If you've got employees, we can help with that, because it tends to be the things that keep us up at night are employee issues. But so much more, like the video said, we can help with almost all aspects of business. So whether it's health and safety, payroll, legals, banking, you name it, we're here to support you, but also help you grow your business through the networking. So on that one, I will put in a little plug for Gary, because as Gary mentioned at the beginning, he's an FSB member, but he's also taken it to the next stage and become a volunteer. So he co-hosts an event called FSB Bexley with us. So if any of you haven't tried networking, it's a brilliant way to make new connections and hopefully grow your business. But we hold them across the UK, so you're not limited just to Bexley or the location that you live or your business is based. They're free to go to, and you can go to as many as you want. The only stipulation is you only get to become a presenter on the networking events if you are a member. I won't go into it in any more detail because it is one of those, it's better to have a one-to-one chat with you if you are interested or just want to know more, because then we can talk about the benefits that are relevant to your business. But I know the question that always comes up is how much it costs, which at the end of the day is the most important bit, isn't it? So depending on the size of your business, so if you've got 0 employees, it's, I suppose, the equivalent of a coffee a week. It's £177 for the first year, and then actually goes down because you only pay a registration fee in year 1. So it goes down to 147. If you've got 1 to 4 employees, it's 229 and goes down to 199, and then it goes up from there. So as you can see, it's not expensive to join because we're not for profit. It's more about helping you, supporting you, giving you the peace of mind that you're not doing this on your own. And when you need us, we are there. All you have to do is give us a call. But I'll put my details in the chat, and if you've got any questions, please shout, and thank you for being my guinea pigs today. And I will try and obviously make sure that the video and the sound play next time.
Yeah, the sound was all right. It's just the video bit, unfortunately. As Rachel said, I've been an FSB member for a long time. We host a free networking meeting every 3rd Wednesday of the month. So the next one is next Wednesday from 11 till 12:30. Rachel, could you put the link in the chat for that? Because you have to, you don't have to be an FSB member to join the meeting itself, but you do have to register with the website for it, and it's under the events, and this is the Bexley FSB, but you don't have to be from Bexley either. You can be from wherever. We're quite happy to take anybody on board, and we have guest speakers, and then we work in breakout rooms. It's all organised by Rachel, so you get to talk to people on the day, and we've got a guest speaker on how to utilise and maximise the impact of your LinkedIn profile, which is very important on business, in business. And indeed, you can link in with me. My details are on the presentation, or go onto LinkedIn and look for Gary Parker, and my details will come up. And please link in with me via that. But this is next Wednesday, the 20th, from 11 till 12:30, and we will have the guest speaker on how to utilize and maximize your LinkedIn profile, which will be well worth attending. But we have lots of other different speakers, and indeed we have people from the council and all sorts of others on a regular basis. So well worth attending, and it's free. There's no cost. We also look for speakers as well for it, but you have to be an FSB member if you want to speak. But if you just want to join the networking meeting, that is fine. But you do have to register with the FSB site, and hopefully Rachel will put the link in now. So anybody who's interested in that, I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. I hope I don't have tech issues again. But there you go. Okay, so we've kind of gone over time for today. What happens next is that you will get an email from us very, very shortly. And that contains a free summary version of the presentation. That's about 20 slides. But as you saw, this is very comprehensive. It's 47 slides. So if you want to buy the full one off us, you can do. The details of that are in the offer you're going to get, as well as other offers for coaching support and other services. But I hope you will all join and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can go onto YouTube and just look for CNT Associates, because that's free. There is a version of this presentation on it from a while back, but of course it's always better to be there live. You can ask questions and you'll get the full background to it. So but please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're going to put a lot more on that, and there's many other presentations on that, covering other aspects of funding and other things, like, for example, how to set up an online store using Shopify. Our next presentation is next Thursday, and it's called again, it's free. It's called How to Make a Living from Writing. You know, writing blogs, writing articles, whatever. And we've got a very experienced journalist and TV presenter called Christian Walmart, who's one of Britain's best known transport and travel writers. But he's going to talk about how to make a living from writing. He's been doing it for 40 years, so he should know. He did it live for us a couple of years ago, and that went down very well. So I'm hoping we'll get a decent audience for that. But already we had quite a high level of registrations, but we can take more. So if you're interested in how to make a living from writing, that's the next presentation from CNT with Christian Walmart, and he's also offering coaching and other support after the meeting. But as I say, he's a regular TV presenter, he's regularly on radio, and he writes for The Independent and The Evening Standard as well. So that'll be well worth tuning in for. 2 o'clock on the, sorry, it's in 2 weeks' time. It's on the 28th of October. That's. But all the details are on our website of our other courses, and we will, of course, email you with the details of any forthcoming presentations if you're on our mailing list. So I'd like to thank you for today, and I'd like to thank Rachel, as ever, for being a trooper. And if you're going to join FSB, talk to Rachel, because she's the best person to talk to. So I'd like to thank you all for being here today, and I hope to see you all again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.